Nice. So hi everyone, I'm happy to see you here. We have a small but elite audience today. This is nice. All right, so my name is Paweł Zajączkowski. For just a brief introduction on myself, I used to do a lot of coding in Java, but then I kind of moved to the dark side, and now I'm taking care of several teams of DevOps and developers folks at Xibia Poland. And today I will tell you about fighters, bards, druids, and wizards in our industry and how to deal with them. All right, so it's our plan. Our plan resembles a little bit a manual for role-playing games. So who of you have played any role-playing games? Computer paper? Yes, debate worked. Good. All right, so this is going to be a 3-pass presentation. We will be going 3 times over our characters. All right, so first, just a brief introduction to our 4 characters. Then a chapter that is sometimes called mechanics. Right, so I will try to explain why I picked those 4. What's the reason for that? Then we'll do a second pass over a little bit more details. So strong sides, weak sides, some examples from popular culture. Then there will be the third pass, the role-playing manual. Usually there is the chapter in a role-playing manual book about how to play the game, right? So we'll be talking about how to play the game of communication with those 4 wonderful characters. And the last section, a little bit of advanced mechanics, let's say. If you don't know how to call the last section in the presentation, it could be called miscellanea. That always works. All right, so let's start with our introduction. So first, we have our red fighter. So first disclaimer, I will be using colors interchangeably with class names. I will get to this why in a few minutes. And usually, when we have some role-playing system, we have some kind of attributes, right? So the strength, dexterity, intelligence, charisma, etc., etc. And it's often the case that each class has like a favorite attribute, right? So our fighter will be based on strength. Like our fighter is strong. He likes to get close, hack and slash goblins and orcs in the battlefield, or tasks and items, in Jira, right, in the sprint. He can take a lot of damage. He can deal a lot of damage. All right. Then we have our yellow bard. So the bard is based on charisma, right? It's kind of like a support character. He has this aura of morale. You have +2 morale in your team. And he's the master communicator, like the face of the team. He can get you stuff done just by talking to other people. Then we have our green druid. So druid is based on perception, but also kind of wisdom, right? He's also a supporting character in a team, but more from a healing, protecting side, stuff like this. And we have our blue wizards. So wizards based on raw intelligence, right? They like to keep a little bit of distance, but they can still do a lot of damage, right? They know a lot of things. So what are we going to do here? I'll try to talk about communication, about approach to these 4 types of personalities, 4 types of characters, how to prepare, whether this is like one-on-one, some bigger meeting, some presentation, an email, right? Or meeting that could have been an email, slides and stuff like this. Some strengths and some shadows. All right, so a little bit of background now. So basically, since millennia, there was this idea that we have people with different types of characters. Like some people are like air, some are flowing like water, some are hard as rock, some are as fire, right? Sometimes we're using metaphors of animals in different cultures for that. You might be familiar with this old, over 2,000 years old theory that depending on the ratio of certain fluids in your body, like blood or bile, you have different character, right? So we have this sanguinic, phlegmatics, and stuff like this. 100 years ago, there was a book written by William Marston that described those very similar 4 types of characters. Then around 50-ish years ago, we started to do some assessments and testing, right? But don't run away yet, corporate stuff. And around 10 or 12, actually, maybe 12 years ago, there was a book by Thomas Erickson called Surrounded by Idiots. Has any one of you read this book? No? Okay, so fresh material, good. It will be based on, more or less on this book, and he used those 4 colors in this book, right? So there's this red, yellow, green, and blue. So maybe later when you see some charts over the internet or something, it will be matching those colors. All right, so now about this mechanics. So imagine we have 2 dimensions of our personality. One dimension is energy, right? You can be introvert or extrovert. So more or less intuitively you know what's going on, right? If you're extrovert, you have a lot of energy, action, before thinking, you are here, you are there, you have lots of ideas, right? If you are introverted, maybe more on the shy side, maybe think before you do something or say something, right? Stuff like this. So this is our one dimension. Then the second dimension would be our focus. So whether we are focused on things, tasks, objects, like programming algorithms, systems, rules, stuff like this, or we are focused more on people, right? On the social side, whether everyone feels okay, and stuff around that. So this is our second dimension, right? And now if we get these 2 dimensions, we have this matrix of our characters. So our red fighter is focused on tasks and extroverted, right? And our Bard is also extroverted, but focused more on people, on the social side. Then our green druid is also focused on people and other living things, but more on the quiet, shy, introverted side. And our wizard is introverted and focused on things. Like, I don't have statistics to back this up, but I have this feeling that probably in our industry, wizards are the dominant sides, at least more than 25%, all right? But I'm not sure about this. All right, so maybe you have heard, or maybe you can find this later in the future. This is actually the name for this assessment. It's called DISC. For those first 4 letters comes from types of characters. So there's a dominant fighter, there is the influence, so influential Bard, there is steadiness, our druid, and conscientiousness, difficult long word, but let's call it order maybe for our wizards. All right, and of course how we behave, it's not dictated only by our personality. So our personality shapes in more or less first 20 levels of our character, of our life, right? First 20 years. And it depends on our roles on character creation. So what kind of nervous system you randomize at character creation. This kind of dictates your character, but then this dictates your attitudes, your preferences, but then there's the environment on the other hand, right? So depending on the situation, if you are hungry, if you are stressed, if you just went out from church or from metal concert, you would behave probably a bit differently, right? So we are flexible. We are not just bound by this character. And of course, this is just a model, right? So our models are false, like statisticians say. Some of them are useful, and there are a lot of models of personality. With 4, 8, 16, we can have 5 separate traits, the Big 5 model. This is like with role-playing game systems models, right? We love some of them, we hate some of them. The list is different depending who you ask, right? It's kind of similar in psychology, so don't be very attached and very religious about this particular model. All right, so let's move on to our second pass over our characters. So, starting with our red fighter, the dominant type, extroverted, focus on tasks. So superpowers, fighter is very effective, very determined. There are things to do, there is agenda to do, I will just do that thing, I will not look at anything else. They are very decisive, even if they don't have full data. So they can make quick and brave decisions, like brave and fearless, so they can go and fight the dragon, or fight the CEO, or CFO, right, if needed, stuff like this, and they are often very ambitious. Right, but there are of course some shadows there. So they tend to be a bit stubborn. They have their idea how to do things, and this is the only correct idea. If you have different idea, you are wrong, basically, right? So if you try to argue, it could be a little bit tricky. They are a bit pushy, a bit rough around the edges, right? When they charge into the battle, they can trample their allies along the way, right? And it sometimes gets a bit difficult. So how it might look in IT, in software development. So you probably all know this stereotype of a hero. There's this one guy who can come and in one night, one day, code like half of the sprint for the whole team, right? And it even works, more or less, right? The green path works, maybe it's not very well tested, maybe it's not documented. It's forced push to the main, but somehow works, right? So they can produce a lot of code. If they use some stuff, it's usually stuff that gets job done, frameworks and libraries. Maybe not the most shiny ones, no, maybe not the newest ones, but quite okay. If you need somebody to resolve a crisis, there is a production on fire, right? Everyone is afraid to do something. There is this fighter who will come and, do what is needed, like execute the risky query or something like this, do some risky deployments. They are first to go in this situation, right? If we are in some refinement situation, they will probably give you a lower estimate because they are frankly quite sure they can do stuff fast, and they usually can to an extent, right? So now our examples. Is there any of you who does not recognize any of those characters or franchises? Raise your hand, no pressure. Oh, but okay, so we have Daenerys from the Game of Thrones. So Daenerys is focused on getting the Iron Throne, especially later in the later seasons. She will do everything. She doesn't care about anyone. She just wants the throne. We have Monica from Friends, right? Monica is very competitive. He has to have stuff done her way, right? When they are playing some kind of game in the backyard, she doesn't care about whether somebody broke a leg or something. She just cares about winning. We have Gimli. So what happens at the Council of Elrond in Rivendell when they are discussing what to do with the ring, right? Maybe should we cast in the Mount Doom? Maybe we should do some elvish magic. What Gimli does? Yeah, he just smashes the ring, attempts to smash the ring, right? So action before thinking. This is the typical red fighter. Right, we have Bernadette, a very small person with a very powerful voice that she uses to get what she wants. We have Dwight, who wants to be the assistant manager, not the assistant to the manager. This is very important distinction, right? Powerful distinction. And we have Darth Vader, if Darth Vader does not approve of something, right? Chokes you with a force. So those are our examples of red fighters. Moving on to our yellow Bards. So the influential type in this DISC assessment. Extraversion, focus on people. So superpowers, there's this aura of optimism. We can do this. There's this inspiration, the morale, right? They are very charming. They are very creative. So they come up with ways to connect things that does not usually connect, right? In novel ways, and they are very communicative. They can do anything done just by talking to people. There are some shadows, of course, right? They tend to be a bit focused on themselves, right? They are just a bit overwhelming. If there's a discussion, there are two bards that will just, talk through each other, and nobody else can get to the voice, right? They are a bit undisciplined, so they chase all the shining things. They start doing stuff and then just leave it for other people to finish. So you have to clean up stuff after them. A bit messy. So in technology, all types of shiny things. New shiny project, new shiny library, right? There is a new JavaScript library. We need to, rewrite the front end, right? Because it's new, we have to try it, right? Any types of routine, and you lose the Bard if you have to write like 10th endpoint of the API that is kind of similar, right? If you need to do some documentation, like again documentation, it's boring. You're losing the Bard basically. But if you need someone to sell your team, right? To do a demo in front of other teams, maybe in front of somebody important, if you want to, have people on the conference sitting in the booths and talking to others for 8 hours, selling your products or recruiting people. Bards are great at this, right? And they are your interface to your team. So basically they can do a lot of job just by being in a company canteen, in the coffee machine, right? Because they know everyone, they know admins, they know HR, they know developers, they know this team, that team, that team, they know who is doing what, etc., with whom. So sometimes they can just get you stuff done by talking to people. And then you don't have to create a ticket and wait 2 months because they just, know everyone and they are friends with everyone. And that's useful. All right? Our examples. So there's Tyrion. Tyrion, you might at first think that Tyrion is an intellectual, so maybe he should be a wizard, right? But Tyrion is a party animal. You can always see him with a cup of wine in his hand, right? He's able to talk to anyone, basically. He can talk to the king on the Iron Throne, to a chieftain of a hill tribe, to a half-wit guard, right? In prison to get what he wants. We have Chandler, who was like the great comic relief in Friends with his great sarcastic humor. We have Pippin, who is basically like a bard in the Fellowship. Penny, who is using her charm to get what she wants. Michael has great ideas. He's there, he's here, he's this idea, that idea. Very people person, not necessarily good ideas, but he has a lot of this social energy, right? And Han Solo, this classic swashbuckler, who always gets in some troubles, but he's able to talk himself out of those troubles. All right, so those are our bards. We can move to our green druids. So S in disc, stability. Introversion, but focus on people on the other hand. Making everyone well and feeling well. People and living things, of course. So superpowers, besides shape-shifting into werber or werewolf or something like this, they are very reliable, right? Stable, reliable team members. They are very supportive. If anyone needs any help with anything, they are always there to help. They will just throw whatever they are doing and they will help. They are very observant, so they can see what's going on under the surface, not on the surface, and they are great with conflict resolution, right? Whenever they go in a room where there was a conflict before, they just sense that something is not right and they can fix it. All right, so seems like a great person, but there are some shadows. They are stubborn, but not like fighters. Like fighters are stubborn because they know right, they know better. And druids are stubborn because, yeah, we were doing this like that for years. Why change it? Like it works. Don't touch it. So they cling to the status quo, basically. They don't like changes. They prefer stability. They tend to be a little bit stuck because of this, right? So a little bit undecisive. They are just, if they need to do some decision to change something, they just freeze sometimes. They need a little bit help with that. And because they are helping all other people in the team, sometimes they get behind with their own work, like they Jira ticket, right? So maybe they will stay longer and do some overwork to catch up with that. So if you are a team leader or just a good colleague, you have to be careful about this with your druids. So with technology, very solid team using proven, sometimes maybe even too proven technology, read, security risk and a bit deprecated sometimes. But if you need anyone to do a code review, to, onboard the newbie in the team, to help anyone who is stuck, to do some pair programming, something like that, they are first to help. If we are in some estimation situation, it's the opposite with fighter, so they will give you a higher estimation just to be sure, right? To be sure that we'll do this on time, so that we don't have to stress about this and everything will be safe and stable, okay? So some examples, we have Jon Snow, who is the man of honor, right, taking care of his friends all the time. We have Rachel, who is basically like an opposite to Monica in a way, right? She has this character, she just wants to make anyone happy and be stable. So it's often the case that in TV series where you have ensemble casts of different characters, it's often the case that you have all types of personalities, and then you can put opposites together, like in one apartment, for instance, right? And it creates some interesting story and some conflict, and something is going on. We have Frodo, who is also taking care of all his friends, thinking about others. We have Leonard. Big Bang Theory is in general skewed towards this wizardy type of characters, like focused on things and introverted, because this is a series about geeks, basically, or nerds. But the Leonard is like the most, say, normal out of them, right? He's like this glue that stabilizes the whole team, despite what Sheldon says, that Sheldon is this glue. We have Pam in the office, so like the good spirit of the office and the reception, and Luke, the light side of the force, basically the protagonist. So those are our druids. So now moving on to our blue wizard. So conscientiousness, sometimes it's called compliance in this model, sometimes analytical, so basically stuff like order, right? They are introverted and focused on things, on tasks, on technology. So superpowers, of course, very analytical, very precise, diligent, right? Thoughtful. They can think about all possible scenario. They can think about everything that can go wrong, right? They are always prepared. Wizard is never late, nor is he early, right? Arrives precisely on time. On the other hand, a bit distant, a bit emotionally rigid, right? Cold. They are killjoys. So what does it mean? Imagine that you have this yellow Bard who has an idea, right? It comes the Bard and, hey, let's do this. We do this pop-up, there will be 2 buttons, user will be clicking here, there will be an email sent, an event here, it will get this to this service, right? Create something there, and great, let's do this, okay, guys, let's do this. Then comes the wizard. Have you thought about GDPR here? Right? We cannot store credit card numbers in this service. It won't work. And all the joy is basically killed or butchered, actually, right? And they are often perfectionists, so they will create a beautiful system, but it will be too expensive and too late. So in technology, great people if you need to do some diligent, precise research, if you need to compare some frameworks. Maybe we should write a new framework from scratch because we are missing this one particular small feature in all the frameworks that we compared. If you are looking at some processes, some corner cases, you are looking where some cache is leaking, for instance, what can go wrong? They are great people who will find this, right? They make great testers, quality assurance specialists, because they think about what can go wrong, what exotic types of inputs user can enter, or what kind of weird things can do. All right, so they think about this. And also, they think about those not that sexy part of development, right? So all these non-functional requirements, like security, documentation, compliance, stuff like this, because they want to have everything in order. They think about this. So our examples, we have Varys from Game of Thrones, like so the Master of Whispers, who is staying behind in the shadows, basically code calculating, controlling what's going on. We have Ross from Friends, like a classic scientist, right? We have this great series of scenes between Ross and Phoebe when they are discussing about theories of creationism and evolution, right? And Phoebe is like, yeah, everyone can choose their own theory, whichever they like, right? And Ross is, what? Evolution is not a theory, it's a fact, right? It's a scientific fact. And then he just proceeds over the whole episode to convince her, to show her some evidence and stuff like this. So this is an example how wizards protects data and truth and science and whatever they believe in, right? Everything should be in order. And if something is not in order, we have to, organize it. And Phoebe is a person who prefers to have a good relationship with someone else, right? Relation instead of being right. Then to change the universe a little bit, we have Hermione, so like the classic, know-it-all, first row in front of the teacher. We have Sheldon, who is like a classic example of mad scientist, right? So brilliant physicist, but he has no idea how to deal with people, basically. And Angela, a little bit rough around the edges, right? A little bit cold, emotionally distant. People don't like her that much, but he's a great accountant, right? So precision. And C3PO, he's a robot, basically. So a bit difficult to discuss the psychology, but when they are in a spaceship that is going through asteroid fields, trying not to die, basically, he's able to calculate the exact probability that they will die, which is high, right? But it's not really helping at this very moment, right? Okay, so those are our example of wizards. And we can move to the manual, so how to play the game of those characters of communication. So starting with our fighter. Fighters are all about effectiveness, right? Getting stuff done, being to the point. So whenever you are talking to fighter, preparing a presentation, sending an email, you don't do some great grand visions that will be best in 7 years or something. Don't be very poetic. You need to, include what should be done, right? Exact points, what you need from the fighter. If you have some long meetings, maybe you don't need fighter for the whole meeting, maybe just for first 15 minutes or so. So we can, arrange what is needed and then let him go hack and slash orcs and goblins on the battlefields, right? So keep it short, keep it precise, think about agenda, think about purpose, why we are doing stuff. Otherwise, you're losing fighter. So all kinds of checklists, right? If you have a backlog, task, subtask, something that can be, moved to the right, forgotten about, done, we can move on to the next stuff. Fighters don't like wasting resources. So whether this is their time or some kind of cloud resources or whatever, they don't like this. If you are in a discussion, right, the fighter is always right. So what to do with that, right? It might be difficult, but if you don't even attempt a discussion, if you don't attempt to convince fighter to something, you might lose a little bit of respect, right? Because you might appear weak and soft, and fighters don't like that. And about decision making, basically sometimes you will go to a fighter to just cancel something, so to get an opinion, but you have to be ready that actually there will be a decision made. There will be a commit to the main deployment to production, a ticket for admins created as a result of this meeting, right? So stuff might go faster than you anticipated, so be ready for that. All right. So what about Bards? So for Bards need to have a relation. Like they like to talk about fun and visions and stuff like this, right? So you need to reserve much more time to talk with Bards. Right, a little bit of small talk, get to know them, get to know their cat's name, their dog's name, stuff like this, they like it. Right, now about energy, this is a general tip, right? If you have very different levels of energy with the person you are speaking to, try to match it a little bit, right? If you are very introverted, speaking to extrovert, maybe try to speak a little bit faster, louder, right? If you are extroverted, maybe try to just shut up for a moment and listen, right? So try to meet a little bit, maybe not in the middle, it might be tricky, but to get a little bit closer, right? And with Bards also about decision making and stuff like this. So logic, arguments, algorithms, and things like that not necessarily will work very well. So sometimes Bards are sometimes operating on emotions, on gut feeling, stuff like this. So we can just look them into eye and ask, how do you feel about this? What's your gut feeling, right? And maybe it will work better, maybe it will resonate, okay? So all types of overviews, visions, poetic intros, stuff like this. I think about having fun in a team, right? So having this positive, creative energy, not just going to work to do the work, and get home to solve problems, but think about having a little bit fun around them. They like to be important, like not necessarily decision-making important, but they like to be included. They like to be at the table in a room where some decisions are made. They like to be part of the group, right? And they are your shining star, so let them shine, basically. Make sure that others know what they are doing, and they will be happy this way. Okay, so moving on to our druids, right? For druids, trust is important. Like druids want to be your partner. They want to trust you. They want to feel psychologically safe, right? You have to be sincere with druids. If you try to bullshit a druid, well, you will lose some points very quickly, right? They like this safety, stability, predictability. There was a good scene in Big Bang Theory, actually it was Sheldon who was saying that you don't just throw a fish to a new tank. You should get the fish, put it gently on the surface of water, let the fish feel the water, right? And then the fish will delve into it and it will be happy, right? So don't do stuff too quickly. For instance, if there are some changes in the company, like in my company, we are a software house. So we have team leaders who have people that are working for different projects, for different clients. And sometimes a team leader is changed for a person, like a person is going to a different team leader. And usually we have this ritual. The old team leader meets with the new team leader and the person that is being moved to a new team leader. And this is like a, this passage ritual. So we are saying thank you, bye, hello, some little nice chit chat, stuff like this. Right? So now, what happens if 5 people are moving to a different team leader? Right? You could do you can send an email, right? You can do just one big meeting, or maybe you can meet individually with all of them, right? If somebody is a druid, the person will probably appreciate meeting one-on-one that, listen, hi, there will be a change, you will have a new team leader, right? And listen, what are they afraid of? If there might be some problem, maybe they don't really like this person for some reason because 5 years ago something happened, something like that, right? So take your time, don't be hasty, right? Let them, adapt to a new situation. Right. Sometimes druids tend to, because they cling to the status quo, they tend to lose like the vision, the clear goals that we are going to. So sometimes they need a little bit of reminding them what are our goals and help with that. They like to support others, and this works both ways. So they like to feel supported as well. Remember about this. They might especially need support with decisions because they might get stuck, right? If something changes, they are not sure. They just froze, and they will be unable to make a decision. So they might help with this. Just talk to them, think about possibilities, why they're afraid of something, and then you can go to a decision, right? Similar with deadlines, basically. Don't just push them to do something, just talk to them, give them time, ask why this is late, if there's any problem, if you're afraid of something. Try to understand them, not push them, right? And one thing that is very important, maybe the most important, there is this type of work called the glue work, right? It's not very visible. There are those people who are just around in the team. They are like this good spirit of the team. They make sure that everything is okay. They are helping people. They are doing reviews. They are fixing conflicts and stuff like this. And Druids naturally cling to this type of work. But this is not something that you have as a task in Jira, usually, right? And then somebody can look at this and think, hey, you are not really moving your tasks forward. You are not doing a lot of lines of code, right? And this is not a good situation, because sometimes if you get this Druid out from this team, the team will lose more than one person of velocity, because then everything falls apart. So make sure they are appreciated for this type of work that they are doing, this supporting glue work. All right, with wizards. So wizards have this focus on time, fact, data, right? Focused on details. They are always prepared. So basically, when you are having some discussion with a wizard, the wizard will have a lot of questions, sometimes to a very precise stuff. At some point, you might just be getting angry. Why he's asking me so many questions, right? But this is just how they operate. Basically, they need to know precise what will happen. And they will not stop until they get all the answers. So be prepared to answer a lot of questions. If you are doing some presentations, if you are sending emails, you can include all the charts, all the additional information, all the data, because wizards will ask for this anyway, right? What else? Time. They have very structured words, and this also applies to time. So if you are late for a meeting with a wizard, you are losing some points for starters. Like wizards are never late. Remember about this. About deadlines and requirements. Basically, if you ask wizard to create a car, you will get a Ferrari, right? If you wanted Fiat Panda or something like this, then you have to say this, right? So you have to specify what do you need, what are the deadlines, what are our resources, what are our limitations, and then we can get to something. Because otherwise, you will get something that is perfect, but it will take a lot of time. Decisions based on logic, right? So just talk to wizard, ask about this, which branch of the code should this decision visit, right? How it should behave. Don't pressure them too much. About moderation, if you have a meeting where you have some druids, bards, if you have some bards, a lot of loud bards, right? Then the wizard might not be able to say anything because they don't have like a space to put a word in it. So from time to time, it's a good idea to say, hey, Gandalf, what do you think about this, right? And Gandalf would tell you probably something very important that otherwise he would remain silent. All right, so at this point, you might know what type are you, or maybe your colleagues at work, or it might be the opposite, right? It doesn't match really, you're somewhere in between. We don't like this, this model. And both are okay, right? So first of all, everyone is unique, everyone is different, everyone has different experiences, skill sets, I don't know, purchase different perks when leveling, right? So we can kind of emulate this by having some subclasses or specializations in our classes. But more importantly, there's multi-classing, right? So actually, statistics from this book, Surrounded by Idiots, actually, by Thomas Erickson, says that basically 80% of people have two classes, right? Maybe one is more prominent, maybe the second a little bit less, but usually you are somewhere in between, right? Some people even have three classes. Theoretically, there are no people who have four classes because system does not allow it, let's say that. All right, you're not that flexible. Usually you have a little bit of leaning in some direction. And often, and also very rare, we have people who are just, straight one directional, one single class, very, very red or very blue or very yellow. It does not happen very often. So regarding working together and teams, if you have classes that are in similar place on one of those two scales, they can work quite well together, right? So if you have a fighter and you have a wizard, they are similar on the scale of being focused on tasks. They can work quite well together. If you have wizard and you have the druid, they are similar on the energy scale, right? They are both introverted, so they will get along quite well on this energy level, right? On the other hand, if you have the opposites, it can be a little bit tricky. If you sit two people who are the opposites, so the druid and the fighter in pair programming on one task, there can be a little bit of conflict there. But on the other hand, it's great to have those people in the team, right? We have a lot of research saying that diverse teams in our situation, so in knowledge work, where we need teams that are autonomous, that are, let's say, fighting with tasks that are very chaotic, a world that is very changing and very difficult to understand. If you have diversity, we have these different angles, right? And it gives us a big plus. It helps the team to, achieve everything. When we have to, have all types of competences, whether this is coding or whether this is selling an idea to a CEO or somebody, right? So all those types of characters will help you there. So now let's imagine we have a task at hand. We have to organize an integration, so we are going with our team for a beers, right, to town. We need to organize this, right? So first, our Bard will come in probably. Hey guys, I have a great idea. Let's go to this place. I know the bartenders here, there, and there. I can get us discount, right? It will be great. Let's do it, right? Then comes the wizard, and wizard will prepare the details. So he can create an Excel sheet or I don't remember the service, but you can provide dates when you're available, say that you are not available, or you could be, but you prefer not to. Based on that, we can calculate the best date for our adventure, right? We can list the options where we should go. Then the wizard will probably create some placeholder in the calendar, send an email at precise time, maybe a week before, 3 weeks before, etc. So all the details, right? Then we have our green druids who will take care about everyone so they feel good. So if there's a vegan friend in our team, he will make sure that we choose a place where there is something else beside water to eat and drink, right, for a vegan. If somebody had too much after our integration, he will make sure to get this person to an Uber or taxi to get home safely, right? And then we have our fighter. If we can get to an agreement which place to choose or what time, the fighter will step in and say, okay, we are going there. End of discussion, right? And then the fighter will lead the assault on the pub, right? And what happens if we miss someone in the team, right? If you don't have fighter, there's nobody to make all those brave decisions with incomplete data. Right? If you miss the wizard, there's nobody to take about all those details, to think about everything, to plan everything. If you miss the bard, we are missing this spark of creativity, this spark of fun in our team. Right? If you don't have the green druid, then it might turn out that you don't actually have a team. You just have a random set of people and everyone is going into different direction. All right, so that would be the last slide. This QR code leads to my LinkedIn. If you want to join the party, you are more than welcome to. If you maybe have some questions that you don't want to ask in audience or on face-to-face or something, you can catch me there. I'm also on Twitter or X or whatever this is called now. And I have a blog that used to be about Java. Now it's more about general software and more people were recently. So there are 2 articles that are based on this presentation or the other way around, I'm not sure, about types of developers, I believe. And also there are slides and some earlier recordings. If you like recording in Polish for some reason, there is also there. All right, so folks, take care about people around you, take care about yourselves. Thank you very much for listening. And maybe we have some questions.